All right, welcome back to the channel yet again, and part two, and I hope to finish all this in part two. We'll see. But first, happy tariff day, week, month? I don't know. Now listen, I could have kept this particular video on private for my Patreon members, but I thought I would open up just in case it is going to help someone that's looking to do their own algorithmic type work, and they have, a defined entry and exit. So the Kelly betting system, like I had mentioned on the previous video, really comes into play. And now you're trying to figure out the details of how you're going to actually trade it. You have your Kelly stats. So I'm not going to be talking about the algorithm and the Kelly statistics, because you can find that anywhere. You can do your Kelly formulas. By the way, if you can do a Kelly formula, you know you have some sort of actual algorithm, and you can create an equity curve, because you can't do the Kelly criteria without filling in all the required blanks. And you can't do that until you actually have a trading model. So if you've got a Kelly criteria done on a trading model, it's complete. It's not discretionary bullshit. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that other than to reference where it happens, what we need to pull out of the Kelly criteria to fill in here to make this trading a reality. All right, so what do we need? And I would suggest my Patreon members create a spreadsheet like this. Now you notice this blue area. This could be part of this spreadsheet, or it could be a separate second spreadsheet. So we're kind of talking about two different things here, but I want to talk about the non-blue stuff right now. All right, so let me give you the scenario. Your portfolio is $100,000. Now listen, I'm going to use named ranges. So you see port val right here, and if I click this, it's some rather long explanation. That's for your edification, not so much mine. So when you're trying to look at what the calculations are, when I do something like this, okay, it's not K9, C6, F5. It's actual words, named ranges, so it makes more sense to you. So I took the time to do that, and I made them rather lengthy names. So you need to, all these tan areas are things you have to input in order to get the required information out, which is, given the parameters, how much do I buy or sell? The contract size. This is what we're trying to do in this portfolio here, in this spreadsheet. So you have a portfolio value, let's just say of $100,000. Now, I've got a bunch of trades lined up on the side here. This is just a sample. And these are examples. They're not what we use. So the ES long. Now, I suggest for people to use the micros. So this is micro gold. These are micro S&Ps. It's simply because you can detail it in. You can fine tune it. You're not doing large blocks, especially if you have a smaller portfolio. And, it's just the way to do it. So your portfolio is $100,000. So let's just take as an example, we're going to go long the ES. So we're going to do micros in this case, MES. So the Kelly betting criteria would tell you to bet, say, 40% of your account. And you go, well, hey, that's a little rough. I'm not going to do that. That's a full Kelly. What would a half Kelly be? Well, 20%. What's a quarter Kelly? 10%. That type of thing. Now, you get into an issue, and this is why this may take a third video. You get into an issue where if you're just trading one or two securities, you could do larger sizes, and you could be willing to risk, and say in this case, more than 5% of your portfolio on a single bet. Now, 5% of your portfolio on a single bet as a max loss is a hell of a lot. So you might want to just naturally knock this down to 2%. But where this column right here, these three come from, is from your Kelly bet scenario. And since you are doing multiple different trades, and let's just assume that they're all correlated. Don't try to get fancy and say, well, I'm going to be in this one and it's not well correlated, or it's inverse correlated to another. Just assume for risk, so you can be more safe, not less safe, that everything is correlated. So everything's going to go for a shit at the same time. Because you'll note that's usually how it happens anyways when push really comes to shove. So we're going to bet 5% of our portfolio. These numbers in this column here, the 5, 4, and 3%, would come as some amount of your Kelly bet system, the Kelly betting portion. Now those numbers are also derived at how much, where's your stop going to be, how much you're willing to lose on a percentage of the underlying. So in this case, we're going to take this particular trade, the ES long. We're not going to stop out till the ES itself loses 4%. That's what this is, the risk percent on the underlying. And there again, that just comes from your algo. And your algo is going to trade different securities with a greater or larger number on the risk percent, simply because some things you couldn't trade. I'm just thinking of anything that's volatile. I'm just going to say it that way. Anything that's volatile, more volatile than the ES, would have to have a larger underlying risk percentage, or you're being stopped out. So like death of 1,000 cuts all the time. So that's why you see here, and by the way, this was kind of accidental, but I just see it here. Gold tends to be a little more volatile. So it would typically have a larger risk percent on the underlying move before you would stop. And it's kind of just a necessity of how you have to trade certain things. All right, but you still got to cut those losses short at some point. So obviously, if this trade was allowing you to lose 5% on a given trade before stopping out, or a given underlying price before stopping out, you got to hope that these wins are a lot larger than that, however you designed it in your algo. But you would find that out because the Kelly bet system would tell you, well, whatever you're trying to do here isn't working. All right, it's a non-starter. Don't trade it. It would tell you to trade 0. So let's just make those assumptions here. But all the stuff in tan is the input you need. So this is how much your portfolio is going to bet. And this is the underlying move that you're going to allow that security to do before you stop out. What else do you need? Well, you need the price of your securities. So I just slapped in some numbers that I know are close. You need the multipliers, okay, of these different securities. So the MES is a 5, the ES is a 50, etc. So how do we calculate the size based on these parameters? All right, so let me just click here. So there's this section here divided by this portion here. So what are we trying to do here? We're trying to find the contract size. So the first thing we need to do is, how much are we willing to lose? Well, 5% of 100,000 is $5,000. So you'll notice this first section here, portfolio times the MES long percent bet. That's just this right here. All right, so that'd be 5,000. And then the rest of it is just working on, let me just click in the box here, and you can just kind of see you're working on the price itself. You need to know that. You need to know the multiplier because we're talking dollars. And you also need how much is this underlying going to move. So we multiply these three and divide them into that $5,000. And that's where you get 4.13 contracts. So you would round this to 4. And the deal here would be is if you had 100,000 and you wanted to trade this, the ES under these parameters, and you chose not to choose the micro, but the mini, it's 50. So you move that one decimal place, you'd have to trade like 0.4, like a half a contract. You can't do it. So they're for the micros. So that's how you calculate your contract size. So I'm going to just leave this up here for a second. Actually, you can pause it up into the formula bar, and you can read it. And you'll see we just used, there's the portfolio value. That's a long percent bet. Long underlying percent move. This is your multiplier, and this is the current price, right? So that's what you need. So you can stop that and you get that calculation. Now let's prove this thing. Let's just prove this trade. Let's just say we went into this trade with this parameters and we entered it long at 60.50. Okay, so I just put this in this blue area here just on this page. I actually keep a running tally of my trades. So for me, this is a separate Excel spreadsheet, and it has a lot more fields, but I'm just going to do this for this one. So I do trade number 1. I put the entry date. I put what I'm trading. So we're going to do MES long here. So we're going to be using 5% of our portfolio, 4% underlying drop on a stop. So very easily, the entry price is here. This is 4% lower, and the max possible loss, I did do a little bit of, you can see L9 minus M9 times E9. I didn't do that here, but I'm going to leave this here as well. I didn't use name ranges for that. But basically, what this should work out to, using this proper formula, this 5,000 should be the percentage of your portfolio to bet, which is 5,000. So that is your max possible loss, is 5,000. Now, one other thing, it looks like we are going to get this done in a single video. One thing I want to mention here, you are going to do a second trade, a third trade, a fourth trade. When you're calculating the second trade, Do not do it on the 100,000 because you're not likely, well, even if you were putting these trades on all at the same time, or technically one after the other because you can't technically do it all at the same time, assume this maximum loss is done. Assume you take the maximum loss. So the next trade you do 95,000. Okay, don't worry about this. This is the trade you're in. It calculates the rest of the trades you could be in on that smaller amount. Put that in here in the second trade. What's your max possible loss? Oh, by the way, you notice this formula doesn't work when I'm changing this because you wouldn't want this max possible loss to change. You would want that to stay at 5,000. So, but here again, I'm just showing you what you would do in a separate one. Make sure this doesn't change when you're trading this, or you've done something incorrect here, because you want to keep this maximum possible loss at 5,000 for your records. But even still, even if you didn't look, you do 95,000 as your max possible loss. These are going to set you back up, and you can fill in this trade. It's going to give you a max possible loss. Let's just say it was 4,000. So 5,000, right, the original, minus the 4, your third trade would be 91,000. Keep doing it that way. Do not do everything on the 100,000, because when you think about it, if you're doing 5% losses at a time, now listen, it's not likely you're going to have 20 trades on all at the same time, but if you did it on the 100,000 and you lost 20 trades in a row, man, that'd be pretty nasty if you did. But you'd be $0. You'd have nothing left. You'd blow up. In fact, because this is margin, you would have been margined out before that, so you would still have some money left, but pretty damaging, quite wrecking. So don't leave this at 100,000. That's just basic Kelly criteria betting as well. It's based on the current portfolio value you have. So just adjust this, use the maximum safety, take the maximum possible loss of every trade that you currently have on and take it off your initial portfolio balance, and then enter the rest of these trades. You can have significantly more than 20 trades lost in a row before you met zero, margin notwithstanding. Now, you're not likely to have 20 trades in a row. I don't know how many various bets you would have total. I think we have 7 or 8 possible trades on at the same time, because you can't be short and long the ES at the same time, not in the same account anyways. But the more you have, the more you would actually want to just scale this portfolio down, the amount to bet per trade, because this is pretty stunning to people. And there again, this is why, another reason why I want to make this video. I want my Patreon members to recognize that you could lose 5% of your portfolio on one bet if it went to max loss. Now, again, the statistics being as they are, I can tell you the average loss is nowhere near 5% of your portfolio. It depends on the security. It's different, but again, with our Kelly criteria being done on actual algorithms, we can gather those statistics, and I can give you, at least for that data set, the rough statistics. Now, reality is going to be different, which is why you always err on the side of caution. But these numbers are, to that extent, knowable. All right, so I can tell you off the top of our head the average S&P long that we do. We might lose 2.5%, maybe something like that. It's a lot closer to what we would be losing, even if we were betting something like 5%, as far as our actual algo is concerned. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I think I did do a good enough explanation here for you that my Patreon members can look over this and they can see how they might want to create a couple spreadsheets to calculate this stuff a lot easier, because the last thing you want to be doing is trying to do this stuff manually all the time. Just don't. Just make a little spreadsheet. I've shown you how. Basically, just copy this. And if you want to track your trades, separately on another page, that's cool. I do it too. And but again, just remember this declining portfolio value. Just assume you're going to take a max loss in everything. All right? That's what I wanted to get out to my Patreon members. And as well as this contract sizing, set it up like this, because I give you these numbers. You don't get a lot of the underlying details, but you get the numbers that are all in tan here. That's what you need to make this work, and these are the calculations that you need to do. All right, I think we're done. We'll talk to you next time. Happy tariffs.